Friday. A couple house cleaning items if I can. First of all, I want to know, a lot of you are members of the Austin Club, and we've started a bit of an informal partnership with the Austin Club. Those of you who got your Austin Clubber magazine this week, in the last week or so, you'll notice on the back cover here is our announcement for the Austin Economic Club with Ambassador Dewar's picture. But let's give all the staff here at the club a big round of applause. And then you all will see on your chairs or on the table, we've started a partnership with the Texas State Public Affairs Network, T-SPAN. There are the cameras here today, and if you take one of these cards, you want to go back and look at the events and hear the speeches again over the weekend or in the future, you'll be able to do it. We're going to have the capability to stream it live in the future if we can figure out how to sell tickets online that way. And just wanted to make you all aware, grab this T-SPAN card and check that out if you would. And then finally, another partnership we're working with, Pat Niekamp is here with Texas CEO Magazine. A lot of you will have seen Texas CEO Magazine. I don't know how she does it, but Pat puts on 3 luncheons in the 4 largest cities, San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, and Austin every year, and then features the CEO in her magazine. We're going to be working with Pat and look forward to helping highlight some of the CEOs of our great state. And so I wanted to mention those couple of things. Pat, thanks for coming. And then in terms of introductions, Railroad Commissioner Porter was supposed to be here, but I don't think he made it. And I want to recognize any elected officials if I can. I know we have State Rep Doug Miller. Thank you for coming. Did I miss any other elected officials by chance? Okay. I know there's staff from the House Energy and Commerce Committee, the Senate Natural Resources Committee. We've got Sandy Edwards from Senator Cornyn's office. Melissa from Senator Cruz's office. If y'all have been wanting to tackle any of your legislators' staff, just look around, you'll be able to find them here. Give them a piece of your mind. And then I also should take a minute and introduce, come to find out in getting ready for this event, there's a bit of a cadre of former ambassadors here in Austin. I know Ambassador Lewis Luck has got a couple friends of mine out later, but I want to recognize Ambassador Robert Hutchings here for joining us. Thank you for coming, Ambassador. And then also want to thank as well and recognize Consul General Paula Caldwell St. Ange. Paula, thank you for coming down with the Ambassador. And Ashley Johnson for helping set up this whole event and coordinating everything. Good work, y'all. We really appreciate it. As well as Jay Cullis Wells. Where's Cullis? There you are. Who is the Honorary Consul for Canada in Texas. He's out of San Antonio and Austin. Thank you for coming. Let's give all those folks a round. Finally, I need to remind you, I just turned off my cell phone. If you haven't turned yours off, it might be a good idea. And now for introducing our guest speaker today, I'm glad and pleased to be able to introduce an old friend, Congressman Roger Williams. We were talking at the table here briefly that the Congressman and the Ambassador have known each other since 2003 because they're both evidently salesmen. About Roger. But Roger was Secretary of State for the state of Texas. The Ambassador was working for the state of Manitoba. And they go back all the way to 2003 and we're having a lovely time visiting here. But if you're like me and you happen to live in Roger Williams District, you would have gotten this a couple months ago. I thought I'd just read from one of Roger's campaign pieces. It says here, after 40 years working as a small business owner, I believe I can teach a thing or two to career politicians in Washington. Frankly, it's all just common sense that you and your family live by every day. Don't spend more than you make. pay off your debts, don't make any promises you can't keep, protect your family and their future, because these are the most valuable legacies we can provide for our children. Please help me welcome an old horn frog friend too, but our Congressman Roger Williams.
Thank you, Jim, for that infomercial. It's a great honor to be here today and to introduce a dear friend of mine. But in October of 2009, our Speaker assumed his responsibility as Canada's 23rd representative to the United States of America. Prior to taking up his current position in Washington, he served as Premier for Manitoba for 10 years. During that time, he worked extensively with U.S. governors and secretaries of state to enhance Canada-U.S. cooperation on trade, agriculture, water protection, climate change, and renewable energy. He won 3 consecutive elections as Premier of Manitoba, each time getting more votes than before. And that's the formula to win, Max, right there. In 2005, he was named by Business Week magazine as one of the top 20 international leaders on climate change. His government introduced balanced budgets, new concept to some of us, during each of his 10 years in office, while reducing taxes, including the plan to eliminate a small business tax. As Premier, he led strategic investments to healthcare, education, and training, and infrastructure. In 2006, a little story about he and I was going to Chicago on the way to Canada to try to sell the Canadians on why they should do business in Texas. And I got stranded in O'Hare Airport in Chicago one night, nowhere to go, going to spend the night there. They told me I could make one call. I made that call to the Premier. I said, would you come get me? And he came and got me, and I'll never forget to forgive him for it, or forgetting for it. And we were able to discuss why Texas was the greatest state in America, and why Manitoba was the greatest place in Canada, and we made a deal, and the rest has been history, and I appreciate that very much. And on a personal note, he was the first and the only Canadian to endorse me to the United States House of Representatives. But he's a business guy. He's just like all of us. He thinks like we do. And I would simply call him a Texan from Canada. And also, among the many things we all agree with him on, both of us are fighting hard every single day, 24/7, for completion of the Keystone Pipeline that will create 42,000 jobs in America, many of them here in Texas, and make sure that we are independent from foreign energy. He is married with 2 daughters. It's an honor to give you my friend and your friend, the Canadian Ambassador to the United States, Gary Dewar.
Thank you very much. I got to call you Roger, but we all have official titles. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I don't know what to say. I think Roger gave my speech about the Keystone Pipeline. But, thank you very much for that introduction. I want you to know that he was weathered in Chicago. We had to send the government plane to rescue him from that wonderful city. And because we had a meeting with the Prime Minister that night, who had just been elected, and we wanted the governors and secretaries of state and premiers to meet in Italy, and we had to get a chance to meet our new Prime Minister, and it was a great meeting. But it is interesting, to talk about weather in the United States here in Austin, because I just got out of Washington. Now, at the beginning of the week, Washington got 1 inch of snow, and I'm a Canadian. And they closed down the whole city. And this has been about the 4th or 5th time that in this winter alone that people are told to watch Oprah instead of come to work. I want you to know that we keep the Canadian Embassy open in Washington, so if you're ever there and it snows in it, you've always got a place to come and meet and get together for having drinks or beer. Sometimes CNN phones us and says, are you open? We say yes, and therefore there's no story to that, so we don't get any coverage. But they then ask, well, what do you do in Canada with snow? And we say, well, first of all, we shovel it, we lift it, we put it in a dump truck, we put that snow in the rivers go through the lakes and then go through turbines called hydroelectric power, and we sell it back to the United States at 6 cents a kilowatt hour. That's what we do with snow. So, it's not that complicated. It's great to be here with Paula and Tullis, who were introduced earlier. The dynamic duo here in Texas and representing Canada. I've really enjoyed being with both of them. Paula got a Texas Environmental Council Ambassadorial Award yesterday, and she deserves it. And of course, Tullis he knows everybody. Everybody in Texas he knows, and has a story about. So, and if he doesn't have a story, he makes up a good Texas story. But he's also been a great person to go to a San Antonio Spurs game. I understood they beat Miami last night. I probably shouldn't talk about this, but I think they're going to kick Miami's butt when they so we're more hungry, and I don't think there's many Heat fans here. There might be two Mavericks fans. I got to be very, very careful. I've had the opportunity as the former Secretary of State, now Congressional Representative Williams talked about. We've had a lot of time here in Texas trying to sell each other. The I-35 corridor is a 9-iron, well, maybe a driver up to Canada. And of course, it is a short route to Laredo. We see this NASCO route as one of the most important, not just transportation routes, but also value-added routes for our three economies, the Canada, United States, and Mexico. But I was here a couple of years ago with Governor Perry, and he took a little shot at me in our speeches. I know he never takes a shot at anybody, but we had a great meeting, great discussion. But in front of this wonderful crowd in Texas, he pointed out that Manitoba, where I was the premier, was the largest per capita consumer of Slurpees. Anywhere in the world, and it's kind of counterintuitive. Northern people slurping Slurpees. And thank goodness my staff were so competent that they put in my notes that Texas was the largest per capita consumer of Crown Royal whiskey. In fact, Maine and Gimli were the largest per capita consumer. So thank goodness I had a good comeback to the governor in terms of two-way trade. And we think selling whiskey has more economic benefit than Slurpees. So on that one, we think we got a little bit of an advantage. I said this before in front of Paula and Tullis, and maybe some of you, but I want you to know that as ambassador, they say, what's different about being an ambassador? And I would like you to know that it's harder, we find it easier rather, to put Crown Royal in a pipeline from Canada to Texas than we find it's easier to put oil in a pipeline from Canada to Texas. But we're working on it. I do want to say for a moment when we talk about Canada-U.S. relations that we've been allies ever since the War of 1812. Today, when we go to a meeting just a couple of weeks ago in current events, the Prime Minister and the President spend most of their time talking about how we can keep our world safer and how we can work as allies together. Most recently, we were involved together in the mission in Libya to rid the world of Gaddafi, which I think is a wonderful move by all our countries, allied countries. We're working together and transitioning out of Afghanistan together. Kids from Texas and kids from Canada are waking up, I guess, early in the morning, and at Kabul together, and we whisper and pray for their safety and their return home to Texas and Canada. And of course, we're working with you on Iran. It's totally unacceptable, in our view, for the Iranian regime, with its known terrorist intent, to obtain a nuclear weapon. And I want you to know that we have participated fully with the United States on economic sanctions with Iran, and we fully agree that containment is not an option after the fact in Iran, and we are ready, willing, and able, as you are, to see the negotiations succeed, but we want Iran to have an energy sector that's comparable to Canada and Mexico when it comes to rules on nuclear power and nuclear security. And I want you to know that we're shoulder to shoulder, and we are ready to do what we got to do if we can't get a negotiated solution for nuclear weapons. That we are very, very involved in the Ukraine right now with the United States. Canada has the third largest Ukrainian population in the world, and the United States has the fourth largest Ukrainian population in the world. Many of those people left Russia under the Tsars, and then they left Russia again under the starvation policies of Stalin. And we are standing shoulder to shoulder again with the United States on the Iranian or the Ukrainian situation, where there's a clear violation of the treaty, a clear violation of international law, and an invasion of Crimea, which is an unlawful act by the Putin regime in Russia. It's not easy to deal with this situation. I know we are working with the United States. We get more calls. I think policy through the last 24 hours, we get more calls from the State Department back to Canada and Canada back to the State Department to make sure we're fully coordinated on financial and diplomatic measures that have to be put in place. We've sent 2 military observers to the Crimea region. We are working with the United States on other military decisions that have to be made, or contingencies that have to be brought to bear. And we very much want you to know that our biggest job as ambassadors working together is actually on keeping our world safe as much as we can, and working together as allies in a ever-increasing, challenging world of potential threats. Having said that, every country I just talked about is almost in the Middle East, or adjacent to the Middle East. And we therefore believe that the meeting in Toluca and the meetings that we should have going forward, we should discuss how we can work together on finally having energy independence in this neighborhood called North America. And we believe we've won the lottery. We just don't know quite how to cash the ticket. Let me just suggest 4 policies that we should put into action to have energy independence in this neighborhood of North America. Number 1 is energy efficiency. The rules and regulations we put in place on having more efficient cars, for example, reduce demand, increase the consumer attractiveness of vehicles, and provide cleaner air and cleaner water. And we have worked together to have the same auto regulations on the same day, the same hour, and the same minute, working together with our 2 countries. We believe that that is crucial as part of the action plan on energy security. Number 2, we believe in energy renewables. Canada has 63% energy renewables. A lot of it is that snow I just talked about in terms of renewable hydroelectric power. But listening to Jeff Immelt just last week, addressing the governors at the governor's meeting, he indicated that it sometimes takes up to 8 years to get a transmission line approved across one state to another. And we would argue it's the same thing across one border to another. We can't get wind power from Montana to Lethbridge, Alberta. Everybody talks about renewables, but nobody will approve any transmission line. I found when I was premier, and I think I said it, I don't know whether you were there when I said it, but I got in trouble for it. I said there was 1 lawyer per megawatt to approve a transmission line in Canada. And no disrespect to any lawyers in the room. Some of my best friends are lawyers. But it was taking forever to get something approved. I remember the governor of California, the former governor of California, the Terminator, had a project to get this place coal in San Diego, and everybody applauded in the morning, and everybody opposed the transmission line of solar power from the desert in the afternoon. So when we're working as three countries together, Canada, United States, and Mexico, I believe the law we passed in Canada, which requires a decision of a major project to be decided within 2 years, both the environmental impact, the economic benefits, cost benefits, the benefits to the economies and the ecosystems. We have a new law in Canada that doesn't allow these in perpetuity kind of decisions. Capital wants to have predictability, and we have this process with federal and provincial approval processes together, all within, not at 2 years, but within 2 years to provide predictability of capital. And we believe also at number 3 in terms of energy independence, the development of shale gas and gas in our North American neighborhood. We have to assure the public over and over and over again about the integrity of protecting water as we develop this affordable, available, and reliable energy source. I heard in Texas last year that what was predicted to be a 100-year supply is now up to the 300-year supply, and there's so many ideas of how we can use that to in-source more manufacturing back to North America and make it very much part of our North American neighborhood. And finally, oil. It's magnificent what's going on in Mexico with the constitutional amendments. Oil in Canada, oil in the United States here in Eagle Ford, and oil in the Bakken oil field. We believe that is extremely important to develop all those assets to have energy independence in, again, North America. And that's why when we look at the Keystone Pipeline, it's really important to note that Canada actually provided 19% of the so-called foreign oil 4 years ago, and we're now up to 32% of foreign oil. And why is that happening? How is that happening? It's coming down on rail. Ever since the pipeline has been stalled in Nebraska and stalled in Washington, rail transportation has gone up 50% in 2012, and it's gone up another 50% in 2013. And why is that important? Because the government of the U.S. has a State Department report that indicates that rail has higher costs, and I'm dealing with a lot of different railways, including in Fort Worth. We're working with them on a lot of different projects, a lot of different transportation projects. But rail has a higher cost, a higher safety risk, and higher GHGs than pipelines. So the president's got a decision. If he says no to Keystone Pipeline, he says no to a situation where he's going to have higher GHGs by saying no. And it's not really that complicated when you look at the science. So we're calling on the president and the administration, and I want to thank the delegation from Texas. All the delegations from Texas in the House and in the Senate have been great. The governor of Texas has been wonderful. We want to thank people. We believe the president should say yes to pipelines and lower GHGs and better safety than other alternative modes of transportation. We believe he should say yes to hard hats and no to Hollywood celebrities. We believe he should say yes. He should say yes to developing and taking our oil from middle North America instead of the Middle East. He should go watch the movie Argo and go with Canada and go for this pipeline. Thank you very much.
Quite some comments there. We've got ambassadors agree. I should have mentioned, and you may have seen it, we're in the paper this morning.
Are we?
Here are the Canadian envoys to push for Keystone XL pipeline. And Ambassador, you're quoted as saying if you say no to the pipeline, you're saying yes to higher greenhouse gas. Questions? Any follow-up?
So we have a pretty pro-nuclear crowd up front. But really address the safety concerns that some people have. Tell us just a little bit about business.
Well, nuclear energy in Canada?
Well, not nuclear, but oil pipeline, obviously.
Well, the U.S. State Department actually in their document, and we don't use this, but you ask about safety, they actually take the life cycle of a pipeline and compare it to rail and say there's going to be 6 more deaths if a pipeline's not approved. We don't, it sounds sensational if we use it, and we don't want to use tragedies of safety, including one in Canada, with the transportation of oil as a reason to approve the pipeline, because we do not wish that those statistics are right, and we do not wish any tragedy on rail to back up our arguments on pipeline. But the numbers are there in the report. So I was at the University of Texas today, and somebody said, you know, you hear the battle of the one-trick ponies, you know, oil can carry it against Birkenstock Betty, and that's all you hear in Washington. But, you know, they say, well, where can we really find out some good, you know, some useful information? I said, read the State Department report. The scientists in the State Department have written a good report. And of course, the people opposed to their view have accused them of the company and the State Department of having no integrity. Well, that was under Hillary and now under John Kerry. My God, these people. And then the Inspector General looks at it, and the allegations made by the environmental industry fell like a house of cards. But has anybody ever apologized for accusing somebody of a corrupt process when it's proven to be wrong? So that's a long answer to a short question. There's some good stuff in the safety side in the State Department report. And I'll take scientists from the State Department over people that chant at me on the streets.
We got one right here, Douglas Kane.
What does Canada think about the advent or the discovery of the Burgoyne Basin down in Mexico, and what kind of impact can that have on all 3 of our countries being able to have true energy independence?
Well, we think it's phenomenal, and I think we know, and I want to, you know, we had the meeting in Toluca with the President, with the Prime Minister, and President Piñera in Mexico. And, you know, it is an amazing time to be at a 3 Amigos meeting to look at energy security and energy opportunity in our 3 countries. The fact that the Mexican Constitution has been amended in relatively a short period of time. The challenge they have is, you know, they have 35% of the revenue from Pemex into the national budget. So the only solution to the fact that we're having a reduction in the barrels of oil available to export from to the United States and Canada from Mexico based on the lack of technology. The only way to solve that is to have this amendment and have private capital as part of the solution in Mexico. We are very excited about what they've been able to achieve. As I've heard from most Texans, they're very excited about it. There will be lots of opportunity, I think, for Texas companies with their know-how to operate as part of that private sector opportunity under the amended Constitution. But, you know, up until this announcement of the constitutional change, Mexico was going to be a net importer of oil by 2020. The amount of oil coming out of Mexico was going down every year. So I think we should applaud what's going on in Mexico. The 3 Amigos together, we can have energy independence in the next 5 years. And we've talked about it since Richard Nixon. We can do it. And Mexico's part of it.
We got one more over here.
Yeah, my question is, the cost of bringing a barrel of oil from Canada's Goose pipeline versus the pipeline.
Well, it's about, the numbers change a bit, but it's about $5 a barrel we take on average. The contracts change, but it's just a question of capacity. There's a role for rail. I represent railways in Canada as well, including BN that comes to Winnipeg. And they're doing lots of work in transporting lots of energy into Canada because our ports are sometimes more friendly to the products from the United States than some of the U.S. ports. But we believe that the cost is about $5 a barrel. It varies, but we just think it's a capacity issue. And where do trains go? They go through cities. So we think there's a role for smaller refineries those two Valero refineries in Delaware, where it makes sense. We actually work with rail and the companies to get that rail guarantee of oil, smaller amounts of oil required per day, but with large volumes into the Gulf Coast. Pipeline is the only sensible economic, safety, and environmental way to go.
We have this gentleman back here first.
Yes, sir. Ambassador, I was curious what your opinion would be on the Crawford family case with the Texas Supreme Court with the Trans-Canadian Pipeline about eminent domain. I'm not sure.
What was the
Eminent
family?
domain?
Eminent domain issue that's going before the Texas Supreme Court. I've not heard any rulings, or there was supposed to be a response with Trans-Canada. I have not heard if that's been resolved. What's your opinion on that case?
Well, I'm going to be very careful about what the Texas Supreme Court will decide, but whether it's railways, highways, flood protection, stewarding, damming of water right back to the 30s that took place here in Texas with LBJ and others long ago, there is requirements from time to time to make decisions in the public interest. I know I had flack as premier when we were taking Winnipeg from a city with 100-year protection, flood protection, to a situation where we went to 1 to 700-year protection, and by having water go around the city. Now, I had flack from people in the environmental movement on expanding the floodway, but I actually thought, you don't have to study something. If your city floods and the little fishies go in your basement, you're dead. If you have a floodway go around the city, they live. To be caught by all of us who love to fish. So I didn't think it was that complicated, but there are these issues that sometimes the public interest sometimes have to be part of every decision we make. We always want to be very respectful to landowners, but whether it's railways, highways, flood protection, you sometimes have to act in the broader public interest. But I'm not going to determine, these are tough issues for courts, and I wish them well in their wisdom, because these decisions require wisdom.
Final question, Jim.
Mr. Ambassador, thanks for being here today. Quick question, you mentioned about a potential agreement when they talk about the transmission lines, or making an agreement on that. Do you have any ideas for Americans in regards to dealing with the Endangered Species Act that's been our big Achilles heel down here, especially the sue and settle provision of always continue listing endangered species, and thereby thwarting the ability to develop resources and the ability to transfer? I don't know if you've got any ideas on that.
Well, I think, again, the State Department on this existing pipeline identifies through the Secretary of Interior, under Ken Salazar, the former Secretary of Interior, all the issues of endangered species and how to manage that in the construction phase of a pipeline, because often there's no impact after the things are completed. And I noticed the other day that Ken Salazar, with all that material that his department produced, and the Interior Department produced, said he supports, now that he's retired, he's moved on from being Secretary of the Interior, he supports the building of the pipeline. There is a way to manage endangered species without having vetoes to progress. And I think we can do that. So that would be my recommendation.
Ambassador, we're not going to send you away empty-handed. We'll pass this on to Ashley from the Austin Economic Club with appreciation and thanks for your tireless efforts on behalf of both of our nations.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining us today. We've got 2 or 3 more meetings in the works coming up here before the summer's out. I would again thank our sponsors, Breitling Energy, the Association of Electric Companies, and Texas Oil and Gas Association. Congressman Roger Williams, thanks for joining us. Y'all have a good weekend. Thanks for coming out, and we stand adjourned. Thank you.